In this video, I will be addressing what the decombination problem is, how it can be dissolved, and provide an avenue for the idealist to explore to potentially solve this problem. Before I explain the decombination problem, I'm going to start by describing the combination problem. The combination problem is primarily seen as a problem for constitutive or emergent micropsychism. Constitutive or emergent micropsychism is the view that macro-level subjects, like humans and animals, are constituted by or emerge from micro-level subjects, such as fundamental entities like particles. The problem is that it is very difficult to make sense of little conscious subjects of experience, with their micro-experiences coming together to form a big conscious subject with its own experiences. Some see this as a fatal problem for those who hold consciousness to be fundamental. However, a monistic idealist is able to dissolve this problem by denying mental combination. The idealist can say it's not the case that micro-level subjects constitute macro-level subjects. Instead, there is a single whole consciousness that is fundamental, which fragments into macro-level subjects like humans and animals. While this does successfully dissolve the combination problem, we need to make sense of a big conscious subject of experience with their fundamental experiences fragmenting into little conscious subjects with their own experiences, and this is the decombination problem. Before I address a potential solution to the decombination problem, I'm going to briefly show two ways that an idealist can dissolve this problem. The first option is existence monism. Existence monism is the view that only one concrete entity exists. If an idealist accepts existence monism, then there exists only one concrete subject, sometimes referred to as the One, or the Absolute. Under this view, there would be no other subjects that fragment from the One, because there are no other subjects, and hence, there would be no decombination problem. While this does dissolve the problem at hand, it seems the cost outweighs the benefit. Consider any two concrete individuals, such as you and I. The existence monist must either deny that at least one of us exists, or deny that at least one of us is a concrete subject, or hold that we are identical. Since this implication is hard to rationally accept, existence monism is implausible, so it seems that dissolving the decombination problem this way is not worth it. The second way that an idealist could dissolve the decombination problem is by accepting existence pluralism. The idealist who accepts existence pluralism holds that the many subjects, such as humans and animals, are the only concrete entities that exist. This view dissolves the decombination problem because human and animal subjects are not derived from a single fundamental subject, because the many subjects are all that exists. This view has the advantage of dissolving the decombination problem, but, like existence monism, this view creates more problems than it dissolves. Humans and animals do not appear to be fundamental entities. They appear to have been born or otherwise created, and other entities seem to be prior to them, such as the cosmos. Those like Jonathan Schaffer have also argued that all things are internally related, which implies an integrated monistic reality. For these reasons, among many others, these two ways appear to create more problems than they dissolve. If the idealist is motivated to dissolve the combination problem, as faced by views like priority pluralism, then it seems we'll have to accept priority monism and face up to the decombination problem. In 1919, the Aristotelian Society hosted a symposium featuring several prominent idealists at the time, entitled "Can Individual Minds Be Included in the Mind of God?" Implicitly discussed is the decombination problem for those who answer yes, and F.C.S. Schiller notes how there are two main strategies that can be used to solve this problem. The first one he notes is the phenomenon of dissociation. The creation of the world would mean essentially the great event of the dissociation of the original one into a many. This dissociation strategy is used to this day by those such as Dr. Bernardo Kastrup. In extreme instances, dissociation is a phenomenon in which an individual, known as the host personality, will split into multiple personalities, known as alters, who see themselves as distinct subjects from the host subject. While this strategy is popular among analytic idealists, there is evidence that what we call alters are actually dream characters invading the waking state, which I go over in one of my previous videos called Dissociated Alters as Dream Characters. I encourage anyone who wants to explore the evidence on this to check out my video on this. However, there is an additional piece of evidence I would like to bring up. Scientific experts on the topic of dissociation, such as Delena von Hoyten, depict consciousness across the sleep-wake cycle as a continuum, with dissociation being in the middle, between awake and asleep. However, this middle state between awake and asleep is also precisely where hypnagogia is located. Hypnagogia is the transitional state of consciousness that is between awake and asleep, that is experienced as one is falling asleep. This sleep phenomenon appears to be fundamental to dissociation. As Delena von Hoyten and other researchers note in a paper called Fragmented Sleep, Fragmented Mind, dissociative symptoms are associated with a labile sleep-wake cycle in which dreamlike mentation invades the waking state, produces memory failures, and fuels dissociative experiences, end quote. This experience of dreams invading the waking state is reported by subjects who experience more hypnagogia, such as narcoleptic patients. When in the hypnagogic state, they report experiencing objects and even sometimes people that just materialize, and they seem very real.
As I fall asleep, my dream states, they tend to be vivid colors, vivid imagery, realistic, quirky, but I rarely have nightmares. They're just, it's something that just materializes and it seems very real.
This leads into the second strategy that can be used by idealists, which is the phenomenon of dreams. As F.C.S. Schiller notes, mention must finally be made of the most normal and common, though least sensational case of the inclusion of one mind by another, viz. That which occurs in the relations of the waking self to the dream life. Whenever we remember a dream, we include a dream self. Whenever a dream rehearses forgotten memories, it includes some contents of the waking self. Altogether then, it seems there is empirical support for the contention that one mind may be capable of including others, though it must be confessed that we do not as yet understand how this is done, nor what the limits of this process are. If the decombination problem is about how we need to make sense of a big conscious subject of experience, with their fundamental experiences fragmenting into little conscious subjects with their own experiences, then Schiller says dreams may be an answer to this problem. While awake, you're a single big conscious subject, but as you sleep, you fragment into many little conscious subjects with their own experiences known as dream characters.
Who are the people?
Projections of my subconscious.
There is evidence that what we call dream characters are actual conscious subjects, which I go over in another video I made called Conscious Dream Characters. If a single conscious dreamer can fragment into many conscious dream characters, then this seems to be confirmation that mental decombination is in fact real, and we can make sense of it with dreams. Schiller confesses that we do not as yet understand how this is done, and ultimately I agree. However, I believe there are two important phenomena that can be explored, which may help us understand how the one dreamer fragments into many dream characters. The first is hypnagogia, the second is submergence. I will start with the former. Dr. Andreas Mavromatis explains in more detail what hypnagogia is and how it relates to mental decombination, the core psychological phenomenon out of which springs the whole gamut of hypnagogic experiences is the loosening of the ego boundaries of the subject. I propose that hypnagogia constitutes the dream component of life's triptych, dreaming, sleep, wakefulness, and that due to its unique character of riding between wakefulness and sleep, facilitates the emergence into consciousness of material that might otherwise remain unconscious. So because of hypnagogia, what was unconscious is now conscious, and where there was no experience, now there is an entire world of experience we call a dream. What is fundamental to all of this is the loosening of ego boundaries. Dr. Mavromatis explores the phenomenology of this loosening of ego boundaries and provides a first-person account of this experience in 4 stages. As one enters a deep state of relaxation, to the point of almost falling asleep, one encounters the first stage of hypnagogia, which usually begins with a visual experience of flashes of light and color in the darkness. As one submerges deeper into a state of relaxation, there is a transition to the second stage, where one sees floating or drifting nature scenes, objects, and even faces. The deeper one submerges into this state of mind, they go into stage 3 and begin to experience autosymbolic phenomena. When one is fully submerged, one experiences stage 4, which is hypnagogic dreams. Hypnagogic dreams include all sensory and cognitive modalities, and experiences involving humans, animals, and an entire world that is vividly experienced, just like waking life. Now it is quite clearly easy to conceive individual minds as arising from the raising of the threshold in a larger mind, in which, though apparently disconnected, they would really all be continuously connected below the limen, so that on lowering it, their continuity would again display itself, and mental processes could pass directly from one mind to another. Particular minds, therefore, would be separate and cut off from each other only in their visible or superliminal parts, much as a row of islands may really be the tops of a submerged mountain chain, and would become continuous if the water level were sufficiently lowered. Just as a mountain is submerged, and the tops are taken to be separate islands, so is the dreamer submerged, and the dream characters are taken to be separate conscious subjects. This leads into the next important part of the answer to the decombination problem, and that has to do with submergence. Before I explain submergence, I'm going to start by describing emergence, and the 2 versions of it. The term emergence comes from the Latin verb emergo, which means to arise, to rise up, to come up, or to come forth. The pattern you're seeing is said to be emergent because the pattern arises from a complex combination of smaller parts that are prior to the whole pattern. The first version of emergence is weak emergence, which says the whole pattern, or the higher level phenomenon, is nothing over and above the sum of its parts, and that these parts are prior to the whole. Strong submergence would agree that the parts are prior to the whole, but instead affirms that the whole is over and above the sum of its parts. As I go over in my video, The Failures of Property Dualism, strong emergence is the more controversial and implausible version of emergence, and is widely rejected. Though weak emergence is a more coherent process, applying this process to explain human and animal consciousness invariably faces the combination problem. A human subject is not a mere complexity of smaller subjects, like a herd. Rather, a human subject is one. If the idealist is dissatisfied with this outcome and is motivated to dissolve the combination problem, then we need to do away with emergence and explore the possibility of submergence. Instead of a whole subject emerging or arising from many conscious parts, the many conscious parts submerge or descend from the whole subject. Just like how there is a weak and strong emergence, there is weak and strong submergence. Weak submergence affirms the whole as being prior to the parts, and that the lower level phenomenon, or the parts, are descendants or fragments of the whole, and that these parts are nothing over and above the whole. For weak submergence, as above, so below. This means that the parts are the same in ontological kind as the whole. What the parts are is the same as what the whole is, just to a lesser degree. So in terms of idealism, that would mean since the whole is a conscious subject, then the parts are also conscious subjects. As said by Mary Whiton Calkins, hence the absolute self is a self, which includes this precise finite self, but since his reality is absolute, it follows that whatever exists is expression of him. Thus, because the absolute is as he is, I am what I am. Strong submergence also affirms that the whole is prior to its parts, but instead affirms that the parts are more than or are distinct in ontological kind from the whole. One who affirms strong submergence says it's not the case that as above so below. This means non-mental parts can submerge from the whole. Much like with strong emergence, strong submergence is the more controversial form of submergence. As Jonathan Schaffer argues, for submergence, the intrinsic properties of the proper parts, along with the fundamental relations between these parts, must fail to supervene on the intrinsic properties of the whole. This is impossible, because any intrinsic property of the proper parts ipso facto correlates to an intrinsic property of the whole, and any relations between the parts also correlates with an intrinsic property of the whole. Fix the whole, and all of its parts are fixed. While I agree with Schaffer's point, this point does not distinguish between weak and strong submergence. Weak submergence affirms as above so below, which means if the whole is fixed, then the parts are also fixed. This means that Schaffer's argument against the possibility of submergence only applies to strong submergence, and therefore submergence has not been proven to be impossible after all. If weak submergence is still a possibility, then it appears to be an avenue we can explore to make sense of how the many subjects descend from the one subject. If the intrinsic properties of the proper parts, along with the fundamental relations between these parts, supervene on the intrinsic properties of the whole, then we can understand human and animal mental states as inherited aspects of the fundamental mental state. Just as we understand a region of space to be nothing over and above space as a whole, so we can understand human and animal minds as nothing over and above the fundamental mind. I do not believe that I have provided a full solution to the decombination problem. However, I do believe that exploring dreams, the hypnagogic state, and weak submergence provides a path forward on fully solving this problem. Idealism is a view that has been neglected this past century of philosophy, and submergence in particular has been explored even less than idealism. I believe if more modern minds debated this issue, we may be able to fully solve this problem. But for now, I would not say that the decombination problem is a hard problem. Rather, it is an easy problem that can be solved with interdisciplinary work, such as in the field of psychology, the science of sleep and dreaming, the philosophy of mind, and the metaphysics of idealism, phenomenology, among other fields of study. At the end of the day, I believe the answer to be here. If we can fully understand how a dreamer creates the dream world, populated with other minds within their own mind, then we can fully understand how the fundamental subject creates the universe populated with conscious beings like humans and animals.